بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال: لا ينال عهدي الظالمين. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. One of the greatest attributes of Amir al-Mu'mineen was his justice, an attribute which was manifested throughout his life, and particularly in the 4.5 years in his post as Khalifa of the Muslim state. For we find that although some scholars view these 4.5 years as being the most turbulent years in Islamic history, others view these as being the greatest 4.5 years in terms of any successor of our Holy Prophet, when it came to administering justice between the Islamic State and the Muslims in general. That you find both Muslim and non-Muslim scholars alike coming forward and stating that in 4.5 years, Amir al-Mu'mineen was able to establish the most just government in Islamic history. And a government who many can take as an example today in terms of justice within its administration, justice within its governors, justice which was spread throughout society as a whole. That's why you find non-Muslims coming forward and praising those 4.5 years of justice in the government of Ali ibn Abi Talib. As an example, we find George Jordak wrote a book which until today is seen as one of the greatest analysis of Amir al-Mu'mineen. The book, which was known in the Arabic language as Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sawt al-Adala al-Insaniya. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the voice of human justice. Whoever has not read this book has definitely missed out, for this is one of the greatest books to be written about Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet the beauty of this author was that he was a Lebanese Christian. He was not from an Islamic background. Rather, he was a Christian who endeavored to write about Amir al-Mu'mineen's life, and especially those 4.5 years in which he was a Khalifa. And the beauty is that when he was asked why he wrote about Ali ibn Abi Talib, considering that Ali ibn Abi Talib was a Muslim, he said that Ali ibn Abi Talib is not just for the Muslim world. Ali ibn Abi Talib is for all of humanity. He said that in our house in Lebanon, we used to have on top of our door, La fata illa Ali, wala sayfun illa dhul fiqar. There is no youth but Ali, and that there was no sword but dhul fiqar. And he said we were brought up on the principle that Ali ibn Abi Talib, although he did not share the same religion as us, was a man of justice. And that is all we looked for from him. The beauty about George Jordak is he does something which many of us should do more. And that is take Ali ibn Abi Talib away from the cocoon of Islam and bring him into the sphere of being a universal example. Because for many of us, we keep Ali ibn Abi Talib as a Muslim general, a Muslim Khalifa. But on the contrary, the world should hear about Ali ibn Abi Talib, the human being. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the philosopher. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the just leader. That's why you find that when we look at all other leaders in history, we do not look at their religion. We rather look at what humanitarian principles they left behind for us. For example, when I look at Gandhi, I do not look at the fact that he is a Hindu. Rather, I look at the fact that he stood up for justice and he sought to remove injustice. When I look at Martin Luther King, I do not look at the fact that he was a Christian. I look at the fact that he was a man who stood up for justice and sought to remove injustice. When I look at Che Guevara, I do not look at the fact of his background. I look at what he stood for. When I look at when Socrates drank poison or when Voltaire was executed, we should not look at their background. Rather, we should look at their principles and the principle of justice that they stood for in their life. Likewise, when we come to examine Ali ibn Abi Talib, the biggest mistake many Muslims make is that they contain Ali ibn Abi Talib as a Muslim, rather than looking at him as a human being who had general universal principles. Because when we look in life, knowledge is a universal principle. Justice is a universal principle. Generosity is a universal principle. Eloquence is a universal principle. All of these are universal values that are not restricted to a Muslim, but rather are universal principles which every human being shares. That's why in 1997, Kofi Annan made a survey which he sent to all Islamic states and all states in the world as to which is the most just piece of administrative document ever written by a human being. And the result was that the greatest document of justice ever written by a human being was Imam Ali's letter to Malik al-Ashtar. Who would have thought that Ali ibn Abi Talib would have been revered in the United Nations? Yes, he would. Because those who portray Ali ibn Abi Talib simply as a Muslim leader are performing an injustice to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib was not just a Muslim leader. Ali ibn Abi Talib should be in the same books as Gandhi today. He should be in the same books today as someone like Luther King. He should be in the same books today as Socrates. Yet unfortunately many of the world do not know Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's why our role when we examine the justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib is not that we are examining the justice of the Khalifa of the Islamic State. No, we are examining the justice of the greatest personality and the greatest human being after Rasulullah, and a man who had these principles. Therefore, when we examine the justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the examination of Amir al-Mu'mineen's justice takes three stages. Number one, who instilled this justice in Ali ibn Abi Talib? As in, you can't suddenly have justice in you unless there was someone who trained you to have justice within you. Number one. Number two, did Ali ibn Abi Talib administer justice only when he was a Khalifa or even before he was Khalifa? Because we know after Rasulullah died, Ali ibn Abi Talib did not become Khalifa except for 25 years later. So in that 25-year period, what did Ali ibn Abi Talib do? Number two. Number three, how did Ali ibn Abi Talib administer justice in the Islamic State in 4.5 years? Let's examine these three. Number one, whenever you see a great personality in history, they would have always had a great teacher. Somebody who instilled those qualities within them. Ali ibn Abi Talib's quality of being just was instilled in him by no other than Rasulullah. Nobody could have taught Ali ibn Abi Talib justice like Rasulullah. Because Ali ibn Abi Talib was brought up in the cradle of Rasulullah. Wherever he went, he would keep a track of how Rasulullah would administer justice. Because Rasulullah, when he came as a prophet of God, the main philosophy behind his prophethood was that he was the manifestation of God's justice on earth. Because we know one of Allah's attributes is that He is Al-Adil, the just. He is the Lord who administers Adala on earth, justice. That's why in the school of Ahl al-Bayt, the second of the Usul al-Deen after Tawheed is Adala. التوحيد, العدالة, النبوة, الإمامة, والقيامة. The second of the usul is justice. Meaning what? Meaning that Allah is just and that He instills this justice in the prophets He sends. That's why it is a covenant that Allah kept justice in the line of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam said, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي, how about from my offspring? Will there be just leaders? Allah said, قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ أَحْدِيَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Imamate will continue in your line, Ibrahim, and it will never reach a zalim, because a zalim is the opposite of adil. A zalim oppresses and commits injustice, whereas an adil maintains justice. Rasulullah, when he came to Arabia, Ali ibn Abi Talib would watch how he'd instill justice. He instilled economic justice. He gave women the right to inherit before they did not have that right. He gave women the right to have their dowry before the dowry would go to their father. Whereas now the woman can keep the dowry. Politically, Rasulullah introduced justice. How? He formed the constitution of Medina. The constitution of Medina, as soon as Rasulullah built the Islamic State, he built it on the foundation that there has to be a constitution of justice between the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews. The Muslims of Medina, the Christians of Medina, the Jews of Medina were all living in the same land. Rasulullah drew up a document called the Constitution of Medina. In that constitution, Rasulullah established political justice. How? He said every Jew has a right to worship in their synagogue, and the Christians can worship in their churches, and the Muslims should worship in their mosques. You see today, you see the problems between the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews. They should take a leaf out of Rasulullah's seerah, out of his book, to see how Rasulullah said the Jews, let them worship in their synagogue, the Christians in their churches, the Muslims in their mosques. If a Muslim harms a Jew, then we will punish him. And if a Jew harms a Muslim, then he is to be punished. And if there is a problem between the two, I, Rasulullah, am the head of the state, they can come to me and we will settle the issue. Ali ibn Abi Talib would witness this. He'd see how Rasulullah would give the rights to the Jew, to the Christian, the Muslim. Likewise, Ali ibn Abi Talib recognized Rasulullah making it clear to him that justice can never be achieved without two things. Number one, sacrifice. Number two, honoring the trust of the people who have given you the government. There is no justice in the world except for these two, that a leader is willing to sacrifice and a leader is willing to honor the trust of the people. That's why on the night of Hijrah, when Rasulullah told Ali ibn Abi Talib to sleep on his bed, it wasn't the only thing he told him. Do you know what else? He said to him, there is a trust of the people of Mecca. When you wake up from having slept on the bed, give the people back their trust and then come to me to Medina. You see, what Rasulullah had established in Mecca was the fact that justice can be achieved between Muslims and non-Muslims. That many of the non-Muslims in Mecca, their belongings, which they had, what belonged to them, they would give it to Rasulullah as a trust. Even though they didn't believe that Rasulullah was a prophet, yet they said Muhammad is a just human being. That's why I remember Rasulullah told Ali ibn Abi Talib, return the trust to the people, then come to me. Ali ibn Abi Talib stayed. When Ali ibn Abi Talib stayed behind, what happened? He stayed behind, and then at the time, Hanzala ibn Abu Sufyan. Hanzala was the son of Abu Sufyan and the son of Hind. He went to Umar ibn Wa'il, and he said to him, Umar, I'll give you my mother's gold necklace if you can get some money out of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said to him, how? He said, Ali ibn Abi Talib is remaining behind. He said, why? He said, because everybody believes Muhammad is such a just man that they trust he'd return all the belongings to them. Ali ibn Abi Talib is going to return everything. He said, so what do you want me to do? He said, go and tell Ali ibn Abi Talib that Muhammad owes us 100 mithqal of gold, and that we want our money back. So what happened was, he said, well, what are you going to give me? He said, I'll give you my mom's necklace. It's gold, and I'll give you what you want. Umar came to Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said to him, Ali, Muhammad is a just man. He said, yes. He said, and we gave him our trust. He said, yes. He said, we want some of the trust back. He said, which trust? Rasulullah did not tell me you have a trust. He didn't tell me that Umar ibn Wa'il has a trust. He said, no, Rasulullah owes me 100 mithqal of gold. He said to him, do you swear by the Kaaba? He said, yes, one morning he gave it to me, I want it back now. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, come by the Kaaba, hold on to the Kaaba and swear by the Kaaba. He came, he held on, he doesn't even believe in the Kaaba. He came and he held on, and what did he say? He said, I swear that Muhammad owes me 100 misqal of gold. When he said this, Ali ibn Abi Talib said, when did he give it to you? He said, in the morning, a few days ago. He said, do you have witnesses? He said, yes. Who? Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan. He said, Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan, your witnesses? He said, yes, yes. Abu Jahl and Abu Sufyan. Anyone else? He said, yes. Akrama. He said, who else? He said, Uqba. He said, who else? MashaAllah, all the purified people of Arabia, he's mentioning them. One by one, he's mentioning all the good people of Arabia. So he said at that moment, he said, okay, I will ask them one by one. He went to Abu Jahl, he said, Abu Jahl, are you a witness for him? He said, about what? He said that 100 misqal of gold Rasulullah owes him. He said, yes, yes, I am a witness. He said, when was it? He said, I don't know when it was. He said, okay. He said, Abu Sufyan, when was it? He said, the afternoon time. Remember, the other one had said the morning. He said, afternoon. He said, and you, when was it? He said, the evening, I think. It was the evening. And you, I think it was sunrise. He said, you definitely don't owe any money. Rasulullah definitely doesn't owe you any money. He went back to him and he said, one of your friends says he doesn't know. The other says the afternoon. The other says the evening. The other says sunrise. He said, okay, I admit I was lying to you, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muhammad does not owe me any money. It was just for a bribe which I wanted, the necklace of Hind, the mother of Hanbala. I wanted her necklace. But you found they were willing to trust Rasulullah because Rasulullah instilled justice in their land. Nobody would mistrust Rasulullah. That's why Rasulullah also established social justice. After the battle of Khaybar, Bilal was taking the women of the Jews through the middle of the battlefield after it finished. When he was taking them through the middle, they were going past the dead bodies of their husbands. When Bilal reached Rasulullah, Rasulullah said, Bilal, why did you just do that? He said, what did I do, Ya Rasulullah? He said, you just performed a social injustice. He said, what? He said, you know these women, their husbands are dead. Why did you make them walk through? Why didn't you take them round the battlefield and bring them that way? Rasulullah said, Ya Rasulullah, Bilal said, Ya Rasulullah, I didn't think like that. He said, Bilal, we have not come to bring oppression. Those soldiers were our enemies, but we don't make their wives see their dead bodies. You see how Rasulullah made sure every aspect of justice was instilled? That's why you found Amir al-Mu'mineen took his training of Adala from Rasulullah. Everything he saw in Rasulullah, he applied. But the question is, did Ali ibn Abi Talib remain quiet about injustice for 25 years? Rasulullah died in the 11th year of Hijrah. Ali ibn Abi Talib became Khalifa in the 36th year of Hijrah. Did Ali ibn Abi Talib in this 25-year period just stay quiet? When he saw injustice, did he speak? Some give you the impression Ali ibn Abi Talib was just quiet. He just sat at home and did nothing. One Khalifa and a second and a third, and Ali ibn Abi Talib done nothing. No. Ali ibn Abi Talib would speak out whenever he saw injustice. Yet he'd speak out in a way which was thought of with reasoning, not with stupidity. He knew when to speak, how to speak. Remember what we always say? Plato says a wise man has something to say, whereas a fool has to say something. Ali ibn Abi Talib was the wise man. When he had something to say, he said it. One day, for example, he was not Khalifa. Umar ibn al-Khattab was the Khalifa. Ali ibn Abi Talib, a lady came to Umar ibn al-Khattab. She said, "O Khalifa, I have committed adultery. Punish me." Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "Bring me the punishment so I can punish her." Ali ibn Abi Talib said, "Wait. What are you doing? What do you mean you punish her? Have you asked her why? Why did she commit adultery?" So he called her. He said, "Why did you commit adultery?" She said, "Oh son of Abu Talib, I was living in an area where there was a famine. I had nothing to eat. There was only one man who had some food, and I was thirsty. I went towards him, so I said to him, 'Oh man, give me something that I can eat.' The reply that came was, 'I'll give you if you satisfy my desires.' She said, 'Oh man, I can't satisfy your desires. This is not fair you say something like this to me.' And she left. She says, I went a second and a third day. On the third day, because my eyes had sunken into their sockets, I came and said, 'Oh man, I'll give you what you want.' So I committed adultery with him. But I was compelled to commit adultery." Ali ibn Abi Talib said, "Oh Khalifa, do not punish her." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because in the Quran, Surah 5, verse number 3, those who are compelled while they are in a state of hunger, Allah forgives their sins." Did he remain quiet? No. If he saw a piece of injustice about to be meted, even though he was not Khalifa, he still advised the Khalifa. That's why Umar ibn al-Khattab used to say, if it wasn't for Ali, I would be perished. It was Ali ibn Abi Talib that held up by administration. He is the one who kept on advising me. When Ali ibn Abi Talib saw Marwan ibn al-Hakam giving Uthman ibn Affan bad advice, when he saw Walid ibn Uqba drunk in his Salat al-Fajr, when he was governor of Kufa, did Ali ibn Abi Talib just sit down and just simply say, I'll stay quiet? No. Ali ibn Abi Talib advised Uthman. He said, Uthman, don't walk with Marwan ibn al-Hakam. He will make you commit injustices. He said, Uthman, remove al-Walid ibn Uqba. Ali ibn Abi Talib would also tell Imam Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, go and stand by the door of Uthman. Give him water. I do not like to see injustice. Even though he was not Khalifa, Ali ibn Abi Talib would still instill justice on the side. But when he became Khalifa, subhanallah, how the man who tried to help Uthman bin Affan with the administration, when he became Khalifa, they said, you killed Uthman bin Affan. Look at history. Injustice towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. The man who tried to help Uthman, they said, you are the one who caused the killing of Uthman. 4.5 years, Ali ibn Abi Talib was involved in 3 civil wars. Jamal, Saffin, Nahrawan. Someone came to him and said, Ali ibn Abi Talib, in the days of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, we had the peaceful times. Now in your time, all we have is bloodshed and disunity. He said, in their time, they dealt with people like me, whereas in my time, I deal with people like you. What did he mean? He meant that the type of people we have in the Islamic State are the people who are causing the disunity, but he knew that the main aim of his leadership was to instill justice and to remove injustice. That's why when he became Khalifa, do you know what he said? If you give me the 7 regions of the world, and everything under the sky to disobey Allah and to remove a grain of barley from a tongue of an ant, I will never do it. Because this world is more inferior to me than a leaf which is pressed in the mouth of a locust. Look at that. If you gave me the 7 regions of the world and whatever is under the sky, to remove a grain, listen to the justice, to remove a grain from the tongue of an ant, I will never do it. Never. This is not why I've become the leader. You think leadership is what I want. It's more inferior to me than a leaf pressed in the mouth of a locust. When Ali ibn Abi Talib became Khalifa, his main aim was to instill justice. He done it in 6 different ways. The first way, he done it with his family. Because justice begins at home. Don't come and instill justice in the community when your house is full of injustice. We have many. They instill justice in our communities. Their homes are the first place they should look at the injustice. In which way? Ali ibn Abi Talib saw Rasulullah make a statement one day. Rasulullah made this statement to make it clear, I do not just instill justice in the people, in my family. If my daughter Fatima were to steal, I would cut her hands. Fatima al-Zahra would never steal. Fatima al-Zahra is far away from stealing. Fatima al-Zahra is an infallible, chosen by Allah. But why did Rasulullah say this? To say that in my house justice begins. I'm not going to administer justice outside if there is something wrong in my house. Likewise, Ali ibn Abi Talib in his house was the first place he instilled justice with his brother and his sister. His brother Aqil would come and visit Ali ibn Abi Talib. He'd say to him, one night he came to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen. As soon as he came, Amir al-Mu'mineen, do you know what he said? As soon as Aqil came, Amir al-Mu'mineen said to Imam Hassan, go and get a cloak so you cover your uncle. It might be a bit cold. They went to the roof of the house. He sat with Aqil. He ate with Aqil. Aqil looked at him and he said, Imam Ali, this is all you're going to give me? The Baytul Mal of the Muslims is in your hands. And you give me this dry food? He said, Aqil, this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aqil said, then I'll get straight to the point. I'm in debt. I need 100,000 dirhams from you. Amir al-Mu'min said, Aqil, I don't have that type of money. He said, but the Baytul Mal is in your hands. Go, open, give me some. He said, what I'll do is that when my share of the Baytul Mal comes, I'll give it to you. But me, I cannot give you. He said, then what's the point of you being Khalifa if you can't use the Baytul Mal for your family? Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I've got an idea, come with me. Come. He came. He said, do you see the market stalls, all of them there? He said, yes. He said, do you see the boxes in the market stall? He said, yes. He said, me and you, let's go and break the boxes and take the money. He said, who do they belong to? He said, they belong to the poor people of Kufa who go every day to earn their money. He said, how can we take their money? He said, you are scared of opening their money and not scared of taking from the Baytul Mal of the Muslims? Then he said to him, Aqil, I have another idea. He said, what is it? He said, there's a town called Hira. Let me and you go there together. He said, what shall we do? He said, you bring your sword, I'll bring my sword. Me and you are great warriors, aren't we? He said, yes. He said, we'll go there, we'll find an individual, we'll attack him and we'll take all his money. He said, but that individual, we would have stolen his money. He said, you don't mind, you have a problem with stealing from one and you don't have a problem taking the Baytul Mal of the whole nation? He looked at him and he said, I'm sorry, my master, and he left. Then Aqil tried to invite the Imam to his house. When he invited the Imam, Aqil had prepared some food. Imam said, Aqil, I thought you needed money. But here you have your food. Your food looks more than enough. He said, yes, because me and my wife saved some. He said, very good, then I shouldn't give you any more from the Baytul Mal, because your saving looks very good. If more people like you save, then there's no need to give from the Baytul Mal. He said, no, I don't mean it in that way. I mean it that, we saved on the side. He said, that's how it should be. Save on the side, you will not fall in debt. Why is there a need to take from the Baytul Mal? That's why he told Aqil, he said, Aqil, do you see this hot rod of iron? I can bring it near you. Do you feel the fear, the hurt? Do you feel burning? He said, yes. He said, then why do you want me to be burnt by Allah on the day of judgment? Do you want me to take from the Baytul Mal? There will be a day when I have to answer from the Baytul Mal. He established it with Aqil, and then he established it with his sister Fakhita. Ali ibn Abi Talib had a sister by the name of Fakhita. She was living in Mecca when he was living in Medina. Her husband was protecting the Quraysh who used to attack Rasulullah. Rasulullah told Ali ibn Abi Talib, go into Mecca. If you know any house which is administering injustice, I want you to go in that house, whoever's house it is. Ali ibn Abi Talib heard his sister, his own sister from Abu Talib. He heard his sister was protecting the kuffar of Quraysh. He entered, his face was covered. When she saw the face covered, she said, get out of my house. Do you know who my brother is? He said to her, I know who he is. She said, get out, otherwise I'll tell my brother you came into my house. Every Arab was scared of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So she used to use her brother as a reason. He went in, he pushed the door of the house, he took each of the Quraysh out and he left. She said, if my brother hears you did this to my house, you do not know what he'll do to you. He removed the mask and he says, I am your brother, Ali ibn Abi Talib. It doesn't matter that you're my sister. You were performing injustice with the Quraysh. Rasulullah ordered me to come and remove all injustice. Number one, injustice at home with the family, he removed it. Number two, injustice and justice with his friends. Do you think Talha and Zubair were not close friends of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Zubair was his first cousin, his auntie's son. His first cousin. Talha was not as close because Ali ibn Abi Talib killed Talha's father and brothers at Badr. Stayed inside and he brought it out later on. Zubair was very close, that when Saqifa happened, do you know who was the first man to stand with Ali ibn Abi Talib? Zubair. He rose his sword. He said, how dare you take the leadership of Ali ibn Abi Talib? When Talha and Zubair, when Ali ibn Abi Talib was not Khalifa, they did not say anything about him. As soon as he became Khalifa, Ali ibn Abi Talib changed the policies of Uthman. Uthman used to share out money. Easy. Give! Ali ibn Abi Talib said 3 dinar for everybody. Whether you are a convert or not a convert. Whether you are someone who was converted late or early, everybody gets the same money from the treasury. Talha and Zubair came to Ali ibn Abi Talib. They said, we need to see you. When they entered his house, there was in front of him a candle. When that candle was in front of him, he blew it out and he put another candle. Talha said, why? Why did you just blow out that first candle? What's wrong? He said, the first candle was bought from the money of the Muslims. You've come to see me over your personal issue. I have to put a candle I bought with my own money. Some of us use the wealth of the Muslims, we waste it without any accountability of what we're doing. Whereas Ali ibn Abi Talib would take a candle from his own money. Talha said, I am the one who fought for this religion. Zubair said, I fought for this religion. I was there with Rasulullah from the beginning. Why is my Baytul Mal money the same as everybody else's? Ali ibn Abi Talib said, if it's about who was with Rasulullah from the earliest day, it was me who was with Rasulullah. If it's about who was the greatest warrior, I am the one every battle testifies to. Do I take more than your share? No, I don't. I am the Khalifa. You are the citizens. We all have the same amount. They said to him, then make us governors of Kufa and Basra. I want to be governor of Kufa. The other one said, I want to be governor of Basra. He said, I can't even trust you in Medina. How can I make you Kufa and Basra? In Medina, I can't even trust what you're doing. They said, okay, we're going to go to Mecca. He said, why are you going to Mecca? They said, we're going for Umrah. He said, you're not going for Umrah. They said, no, we're going for Umrah. That's it, Umrah and we'll finish. They went to Mecca, they rose all the troops against Ali ibn Abi Talib. They took with them, with the mother of the believers, they took with them thousands of soldiers. And they reached the battlefield. Ali ibn Abi Talib did not fear justice at all. It didn't matter. He came at the beginning, he said to them, look, please, don't do this. Abu Muhammad, you're my brother. Zubair, you're my brother. No. First arrow they shot it in Jamal, he still said to his soldiers, don't fight. Second arrow, don't fight. The third arrow, only then he fought. They despised him because of his justice. Because of them despising him, 13,000 Muslims from their side and 5,000 from the side of Ali ibn Abi Talib were killed in the battle of Jamal. How many? 18,000 Muslims were killed in the battle of Jamal. Those friends of his, Ali ibn Abi Talib could have easily said, they're my friends, I'm going to give them first class treatment. No. It doesn't matter, you're my friend. If it is injustice, I'll still speak out against you. Number two. Number three, with his governors. Every Khalifa had governors. A governor in Egypt, a governor in Kufa, a governor in Medina, a governor in Basra. He placed in Basra Uthman ibn Hunayf. He placed him as his governor. One day he heard Uthman ibn Hunayf was sitting in a luxury dinner. Allahu Akbar. Straight away, letter 45 of Nahj al-Balagha. Go and read it. Which letter number? 45. Everybody read it tonight, please. In Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Ali's letter to Uthman ibn Hunayf. I hear that you go to these dinners. As soon as the invite comes to you, you go straight away. You eat sumptuous meals with the biggest officers. The officers who reject the poor when they come to their door. Try and take me as your leader. Look at my clothes. I wear 2 pieces of clothing. Don't be like me, but try and come near the piety that I have. Wallah, listen to his line. He says, all that we had was fadak, and they took that away from us. That was the only wealth that we had. Don't sit with these people. Look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. His governor, and Uthman bin Hunayf was a religious man. But Ali ibn Abi Talib thought, if my governor is sitting in these luxury meals, my governor, who the money of the Muslims is in his hands, is sitting in luxury meals while there are poor people in Basra, then how can I call myself Amir al-Mu'mineen? That's why he said one day, how can I call myself Amir al-Mu'mineen when I do not taste what the Mu'mineen are going through? He said to him, don't sit with these people. Look today, you have the representatives of the Imam sitting in the most luxurious dinners using our money to eat that food. Then he had another governor. His governor was where? He had another governor he sent towards Medina, Sahel ibn Hunayf. He wrote a letter to him. He said, I hear many of the people are leaving us and going to Muawiyah. Don't worry. He said to him, don't worry, let them go. They have forsaken the truth and justice, and they've gone towards injustice. Even if I am alone in this world, and everybody goes towards that side, I can take them all on. Meaning that stay on the side of justice, don't look for the numbers. Then he is other governor to Egypt, Malik al-Ashtar. This is the letter Kofi Annan rewarded in 1997. The one line from that letter is on a plaque in the United Nations. Know, O Malik, that the Egyptians are of two categories. They are either your brothers in faith or your equals in humanity. Because in Egypt there are Muslims and there are Christians. In Egypt there is the Muslim and the Christian Copts, the Coptics of Egypt. He said to him, they are of two types. They are either your brothers in faith or your equal in humanity. Forgive them as you'd want Allah to forgive you on the day of judgment. Be merciful on them in the way you'd want Allah to be merciful on you on the day of judgment. Ali ibn Abi Talib, if you make a metaphor of a marja in the world today, make the metaphor in your head. Ali ibn Abi Talib would send out his representatives to the world if he heard any of them was misusing the money of the Muslims. Straight away he'd write a letter to them and he'd say to them, why do I hear you are misusing the money of the Muslims? Whereas today the questions continue to be asked. Therefore you find number 3, what do we find? We find number 3, the governors. He would write to them. Number 4, what is the 4th area? The 4th area is that he'd look after the weak of the community. Who would they be? He'd administer justice with the black member of the community and with the woman of the community. Do you know why? Sometimes those who are colored in our communities are looked down upon. Not with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yes, with his followers. There's a lot of followers who I don't know why they call themselves Shia. But anyway, you find these types of followers, they are very racist in their ways. You find them very backward. Not Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the black youth would come towards him, put his hand out and say, cut my fingers. Ali ibn Abi Talib said to him, why? He said, cut them, cut them. He said to him, why? He said, I have stolen, and the punishment in Islam is to cut the fingers. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, but there are 19 conditions. I said, you don't just, someone steals, you cut their fingers. Do they know the law? He said, I know the law. He said, is it a year of famine? It's not a year of famine. Are you sane? I'm sane. Were you in need? I'm not in need. Suddenly he started naming each one, he passed each condition. He said, cut my fingers. Ali ibn Abi Talib as Khalifa said, well, we're going to have to administer it. So he cut the fingers. You know what this youth did? He started walking in the market saying, do you know who cut my fingers? Imam al-Muttaqeen wa Sayyid al-Wasi. He said, I am honored that the son of Abu Talib cut my fingers. I said to him, why? He said, I would never allow anyone to administer justice on me but Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because I know Ali ibn Abi Talib is just in everything that he does. When Imam Hassan heard this, he said, come with me. He brought him back to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Do you know what the hadith says? He brought him back. He said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, some of the Khawarij were trying to attack you in front of this person, saying, which evil man cut your fingers? When they said that, he replied by saying, I'm honored that Ali ibn Abi Talib was the one who administered this. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen said, bring him to me. He took the fingers, he placed them on the hands. The hadith says the fingers came back towards the person. Imagine. In another hadith, the woman, normally many of the women are treated unjustly. They have nobody to go to. You find that one day there was a lady called Sauda, very famous lady. She one day came to Muawiyah. She said, Muawiyah, I have a complaint to make. He said, who is it? She said, it is Sauda. He said, Sauda from the tribe of Hamadan? He said, yes. He said, I used to hear about you. She said, what? He said, I used to hear that in Siffin, you used to write poetry so that the soldiers would love to fight for Ali ibn Abi Talib. She said, yes, I did. He said, what have you got to complain about? She said, I've got to complain about your governor, Bisr. I said, what did he do? She said, he's been oppressing our people. He said, and I'll let him oppress you more. I do not care. Do you know what she then turned around to say? She said, may Allah have mercy on that man who was buried and justice was buried with him. He said, who? She said, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Said, how? She said, look at the difference between you and Ali ibn Abi Talib. One day I had a complaint to make. Ali ibn Abi Talib wouldn't say a woman is weak, she should not speak to us if she feels she has been unjustly treated. He would rather say, welcome. I came and I said, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, one of your governors has been unjust to our tribe. He was alone. He was about to pray. All of a sudden he said, Ya Allah, forgive me if I have appointed a governor who is unjust. You know that I do not mean to spread any injustice. She says he suddenly began to cry and cry and cry. Then he called out, that governor will be removed. She said, look at you, Muawiyah. You, I come to you, you mock me. Whereas I went to Ali ibn Abi Talib, he opened his door for me. Muawiyah at that moment said, okay, I'm sorry. And he removed Bisr from the governorship. Therefore the fourth area was whom? For the weaker people. Number 5 was for the non-Muslims in the Islamic State. He knew that they might be unjustly treated by some of the Muslims. There were Christians living in the Islamic State. One day Ali ibn Abi Talib was walking. He saw a Christian sitting, begging on the ground. He was blind. Ali ibn Abi Talib looked at his companion and said, why is he on the ground begging? What did he used to do before? They said, well, before he used to have a job and he could see. Now he's blind, he's of no use to us, so we just leave him on the ground. Ali ibn Abi Talib sat down next to him. He said, I will not move from my position until someone helps this poor blind Christian man. When he had eyesight and he was strong, we used him. Now he's lost his eyesight, we neglect him and leave him like this? If none of you helps him, I'm not moving. One of you has to help him, then I will move. Until eventually one of them came and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I will help him. Took him. Which man establishes a state where he cares about the non-Muslims in that state? Except Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because to Ali ibn Abi Talib, his vision wasn't narrow. His vision was wide, encompassing every human being. That's why the Christian took him to court. The judge said, Abu al-Hasan, he said, don't call me Abu al-Hasan. Call me Ali ibn Abi Talib. It's not fair you call me by my title and you call him by his name. Then the judge said, Ali, do you have witnesses for what you want? He said, I don't. The judge awarded the famous case to the Christian. When the Christian left the courtroom, he turned around. He said, this is the day I've seen Allah's justice on earth. He said, how? He said, look at me. I've taken the Khalifa to court. I'm a Christian. He's a Muslim. It's his state. I've taken him to court. A decision has gone against him. And he's walked away saying that the decision is yours. Keep what you have. He joined Ali ibn Abi Talib and he died with him on the battlefield. He converted to Islam, became a Muslim and died alongside him. So you found in every area, Ali ibn Abi Talib would establish justice. That's why at Nahrawan, a beautiful incident emerges when he is fighting one-on-one with the Khawarij. One of the soldiers comes towards him. Ali ibn Abi Talib explains his whole philosophy about justice. When the soldier comes, they're fighting one-on-one, the swords get stuck. When that sword got stuck in Dhul Fiqar, Ali ibn Abi Talib lifted the sword. He had now 2 swords in his hand. The soldier was in front of him. Ali ibn Abi Talib had 2 swords. The soldier looked at him and he said, I have heard you never reject anyone who asks you for anything. He said, it's true. He said, give me my sword back. He said, take it. He said to him, I will kill you now. He said, go ahead. Then that soldier looked at him and he said, how can I kill you? He looked at him and he said, I want to be one of your followers. How did I have the audacity to fight you? Listen to what the Imam replied. He said, don't say I want to be one of your followers. Say I want to follow the justice of Allah wherever it goes. Don't say Ali ibn Abi Talib. Say Allah's justice. That's what you want to follow. I don't want you saying to me, you are my leader. Say Allah's way is the leadership and I want to follow Allah's way. That's why, as a conclusion, Adi ibn Hatim, Muawiyah caught him one day. Adi ibn Hatim, his father Hatim al-Ta'i was the man known for his generosity in Arabia. One day Adi got caught by Muawiyah. Muawiyah looked at him, please listen to these words. They say this is the greatest ever description of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muawiyah looked at him, he said, Adi, where's your sons? طرف طريف طارف. He had 3 sons. So where are they? He said to him, they died under the banner of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib at Siffin. He said, so Ali ibn Abi Talib has done injustice to you. He said, why? He said, Ali ibn Abi Talib takes your sons to war. They're dead. Hassan and Hussein are still alive. He said, it's not him that's done injustice to me. It's me that's done injustice to Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said to him, why? He said, the injustice is that Ali ibn Abi Talib is dead and I am alive. That's injustice. That is injustice. Muawiyah said, what do you mean? Explain further. Adi said, leave me, I don't want to explain. He said, explain. Tell me what Ali ibn Abi Talib is. He said, by God, listen to these lines. By God, Ali was the most far-sighted and strong of men. He talked with righteousness and he decided cases with clarity. He was an ocean of knowledge and wisdom. He loved the simple life and used to wear short clothes. He was a man who did not like the pomp of the world, but rather wanted the solitude of the night. He would scrutinize himself and pity about the past. When he was with us, he was one of us. When we'd ask him for something, he'd grant our request. He'd always say to us, come visit me. When we'd visit him, he'd come and sit next to us. He then would say he used to like the people who were honest and kind, and he used to love the poor. He used to say that he was a man who, although he was humble, we were inspired when we'd sit with him, that we wouldn't talk. When we would see him, then he'd say, it's as if I see him now, that his teeth were like a string of pearls in front of me. The strong did not fear his injustice, and the weak did not lose hope of his justice. Listen to these 2 lines. The strong did not fear his injustice, and the weak did not lose hope of his justice. I remember seeing him one dark night in his place of worship. He was crying and crying and crying like a person bitten by a snake, bereaving someone. He said, that is Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, do you miss Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, I miss Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, like what? He said, like a mother whose baby is beheaded in her lap. And that is how much I miss Ali ibn Abi Talib. Then he said, what? Then he said, do you forget Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, does the world allow you to forget Ali ibn Abi Talib? Does the world allow you? It doesn't. That's why you see Ali ibn Abi Talib, every one of his lines was about administering justice. Some of the justice we saw, others nobody knew about until after he died. When Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein buried their father, they were returning home. They saw this man sitting on the ground crying and crying and crying. Imam al-Hassan approached him and he said to him that, oh man, why do you cry? He said, every night there used to be somebody who would come and feed me in the middle of the night. But for the past 3 nights that person hasn't come to visit me. Do you know who that person may be? Abu Abdullah remembered his father, and he knew that his father in the middle of the night would go out and help the poor. Abu Abdullah began to cry when he remembered having just buried his father, and he said to the man, oh man, do you know who that man was? The man said, tell me who the man was. He said, it was my father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Every night he used to come and feed you. So he said to Abu Abdullah, then can you tell me why he hasn't fed me the past 3 nights? He said, because the poison of Ibn Muljam's strike had surrounded his body. He said, where is Ali ibn Abi Talib? He said, we had just buried my father in the ground. The poor blind man began to cry when he heard that Ali ibn Abi Talib was buried.
That's why Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he died, at least his family was around him to bury him. Each one of them was there around him. Ali ibn Abi Talib, Rasulullah, Fatima al-Zahra, all of them, Imam al-Hassan, they always had someone around them when they died. Likewise, all of their body was buried in one time. There wasn't a part of their body that was separated. The head was buried, the body was buried, everything was buried together. Except Abu Abdullah, when he was buried, his head was not next to his body. Abu Abdullah, when he was buried, his family were not around him. Abu Abdullah was lying on the ground in Karbala with nobody to bury him. Until Imam Zayn al-Abidin returned back to bury the body of Abu Abdullah. When Imam Zayn al-Abidin returned to bury his father's body, when he came, he saw Banu Asad, the tribe from Kufa. They were wondering how to bury the bodies in Karbala. The problem was that each body was separated from the head. And if there were heads, they didn't know which head will belong to which body. All of a sudden they saw Imam Zayn al-Abidin coming towards them. They didn't know it was Imam Zayn al-Abidin. They said to him, "Oh man, what are you doing?" He said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We have come to bury the bodies." Imam Zayn al-Abidin looked at them. He said, "I will help you and tell you where to bury the bodies." He said, "The first thing I want you to do is to dig 3 separate graves." They went and they dug 3 separate graves. He started putting the bodies in each of these 3 graves. And they said to him, "Can you tell us who the first grave belongs to?" He said, "The first grave belongs to the companions of Abu Abdullah. I have buried each of the companions in their grave." They said to him, "Can you tell us who the second grave belongs to?" He said, "The second grave belongs to the family of Abu Abdullah." And they said to him, "Can you tell us who the third grave belongs to?" He said, "The third grave belongs to Habib ibn Madahir. And that my father said, give Habib ibn Madahir his own grave." Then he said to them, "I'm going to bury a body now." They said, "Let us come with you." He said, "Don't worry about it. This body I will bury by myself. And there are angels to support me when I bury this body." You know whose body he's going to now. Those of you who've been to Karbala, shed your tears now. You know whose body he is going. He went towards the body. With him, he took with him a prayer mat, a sajjada, a musalla. He carried it with him. He came near the body. When he came near the body, the poets asked, "Why did Zayn al-Abidin take a musalla with him? Is it because he wanted to pray?" No, it's not. Then why? Because he wanted to carry the limbs of Abu Abdullah. He wanted to take the body parts of Abu Abdullah. Because Abu Abdullah's body was cut into many pieces. He put the body of his father. He placed it in the area of the musalla. Then someone from Banu Asad came to him and said, "Oh man, there is a body by the Furat. When we lift the right side of the body, the left falls on the ground." You know who this is. If you love him, you'll cry tonight. When we lift the right side of the body, his left side falls on the ground. When we lift the left side of the body, his right side falls on the ground. He said, "Assalamu alayka ya Qamar Bani Hashim. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Fadl al-Abbas." He came towards his uncle's body. When he lifted the right side of the uncle's body, the left side all fell on the ground. When he lifted the left side, the right side fell on the ground. He said, "I wondered," the poets say, "I wondered when they did to Abu Fadl on the 10th of Muharram." Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the path of Muhammad and Ahl Muhammad, to raise us with the Imam of our time. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept these 22 nights of majalis. Allow them to be a source of light for all those who have attended the majalis. Ya Allah, answer the prayers of those who have attended and have listened to the majalis. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all our Muslim brothers around the Islamic world. Our brothers in Iraq and Iran, in Pakistan, in India, in Lebanon and in Syria, in Bahrain and in Saudi Arabia, and all our brethren around the Islamic world. Ya Allah, remove all injustice from them. Allow them to honor the message of Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Ya Allah, allow us the ziyarah of your Prophet in Medina. Allow us the ziyarah of your Imam in Najaf, and your Imams in Karbala, your Imams in Kazmain. Ya Allah, allow us to be next to the Imams in Samarra. Allow that holy dome of Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari to be raised again, and allow the Imams of Baqi' to be honored. Ya Allah, allow us to follow their ways. This was of course tonight, the last night of our majalis here in Dar es Salaam. We have of course the seminar which will begin in a couple of nights. But I'd like to thank everybody who is here for having come towards the majalis and listened so patiently. We ask you to forgive us for anything that we may have said that may have offended anyone, for as you know, that was not our aim. We'd like to thank all of those who have helped this year in organizing this majlis. As you know, there are so many wonderful names to mention. The committee as a whole, led by Anwar Bhai and his team, of course, have done a great job. Haji Mushtaq and his excellent work in being a Mukhi here, absolutely outstanding in the way he has dealt with me, and I've been honored to work with him, and truly someone who has organized this program excellently. May Allah reward both of them, the committee and the Mukhi. Ya Allah, also reward Nur Ali Bhai Somji, who of course was one of the main organizers in bringing me here for the third year in a row to Dar es Salaam. And Ya Allah, reward Mahbub Fazil Karmali and his family for being my host for the third time, and the whole family who have served in the best of ways, and for all of those who have organized the program. There are many names we can mention, and I'm sorry for anyone who we have not mentioned, but we ask all of you to pray for us. Inshallah, we will return, inshallah, within a few years' time to honor Dar es Salaam again. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.